This is the book I wrote in high school. I got out of the safe, and then I gave it to the director, and Elizabeth Healy, and I showed it to her. It's a 115-page book, and I showed it to her and said, I want to teach my peers calligraphy. And she said, and it's all my mother helped edit it. I spent a whole summer after a National Science Foundation scholarship putting this all together.
That's so cool.
So I got to go to, the story of going to field school is really unique because I was having a hard time in school. I repeated 4th grade, and my mother went into the principal at the public school and said, there's something off because Martin does so well, or Marty, it was little Marty, me, does so well with adults, he articulates well, something's not working. Well, back then, really dyslexia hadn't been widely known.
Right.
So she said, let us do some tests and find out. And she went to the GW Reading Clinic, and then they did an IQ test, and it was really quite high. And then they found that my ability to read and comprehend words was very slow. And they said, I think he has dyslexia.
Okay.
And I defined it as my mind moves too fast to grab the words to get them in.
Right.
It could be a scanning problem, I don't know now.
So did you always know that something like
No,
or
I didn't.
Or did other people, was it people at field that identified that something, that you may have some learning challenges?
What happened is, when I got to 4th grade and reading was more of a demand, they said he needs special help.
Okay.
And so the only tutor we had was also in charge of what we sadly called then retarded kids, which was a really cruel term.
Right.
And we made fun of these kids, but I was pretty upset because that was just delayed challenged children. But they put me into that class.
Right.
Okay. Well, these kids had some very strong delays. It was a real misfit because I could communicate and fairly high, really able to function. And the kids in that class were really at a very childlike level. So my mother went into the principal when this happened and said, there's something going on. All I know is I remember in the public school hearing my mother yell at the principal through the walls. And then we tried to get me to another school. And we got me, first of all, we got me into, tested at the GW Reading Clinic, identified the dyslexia, and then got me into a school that worked pretty well, but it went out of business. Then we tried another school, and it didn't work as well.
Okay.
So we're trying to find a new school, and we found the field school, and I went in, and I said, let me go in and myself and talk to the principal.
Right.
So I went in and talked to Elizabeth Healy on my own, and I came out afterwards, and I said to my parents, I'm going here. We discussed it.
So what was it about the interview process? Well, first I want to back up a little bit because you didn't get a chance to introduce yourself.
Yes.
And then say your class year. So just tell me your name.
Sure. My name is Martin Brossman, and I'm class of 78. I'm pretty sure of the field school back when it was off of Connecticut Avenue. Wonderful houses and stuff. Okay. And so that was where I went to the school and found out. So what occurred is I met with Elizabeth Healy. All I remember is that we had a talk where I really felt respected and we were both interviewing each other to go to the school. That's my memory of it.
Right. So like what about the exchange with her made you feel at home and like she was someone that you could really connect with?
Well, because Elizabeth Healy treated us, every child, as a potential adult. So she had a gift for hearing you right where you were and really speaking to you.
Right.
So it was not talking down to you like a child or something else, but she kind of like saw each child as the potential they were.
Yeah.
And that's to me her greatest gift she saw, because she listened to the children as their potential, but was realistic of where they were and wanted them to learn the consequences for survival.
Right. Do you feel like that like what she brought to the school is part of its core values to this day?
From all my best experience, it seems to be. I've had a chance to visit a few times. I've had a chance to talk to the kids. I really think the concept is, how do we help young people become better citizens and be the best expression of them?
Right.
So instead of saying, who do you want to be when you grow up, the field school is looking at the child and listening for who they are. Yes. And then how do we amplify? And that's what Elizabeth seemed to be gifted at as well.
Yeah.
And I think that was her greatest gift, was that amplification and creating an environment for you to succeed in, with also boundaries and structures. If you did something that didn't work, there were consequences.
Right. So like, tell us a little bit more about your field school experience. Did you have a winter internship?
Yes, and I loved the winter internship because one of the biggest things in the internship was I got the ability to earn the right to go to a national science scholarship. See, I wanted to be a physicist back then. Now, what I learned later in life is I had some fundamentals in math I didn't develop that created problems later on. But physics is still a passion, even though I'm a business and success coach.
Right.
And so I wanted to do this, and I got to earn the right to be in a National Science Foundation scholarship. And then from there, in the winter internship, we found wonderful projects to work on. From my uncle worked at the Naval Research Laboratory, and I got to participate helping with a scientists there doing research, and I found errors on a satellite tracking system. I got to work on a political campaign and help out with it as an internship, where I got to work inside. I was actively involved in the Carter campaign.
Oh, that's so
And so that was pretty wild, because my wife is because my mother was from the South. This was a big deal. So my parents were both staunch Democrats, and it was a very big deal to her. She was also a civil rights advocate and women's rights advocate, and much more. So
what did you do for the campaign?
I helped out with both the campaign, where we went out and canvassed on buses together, and then I also got to help volunteer with being in the office in the selection process after Carter became president for the staff. So I got to do different tasks and helping out with them.
So how do you feel like your winter internship is connected to what you do now? Or how do you feel like it gave you the tools in order to be successful at what you're doing?
Yeah, the biggest thing is I learned about the real world. I mean, you got to learn what's going on in the real world. What does real work look like? What does real activity look like? What are they doing in the real world? And I got a window into this that I realized many kids have not gotten. And many young people haven't received that. And that, to me, is the biggest thing, is this window into the real world. So working with a science advisor, I had to meet his criteria and research the work, and I had to get permission. It was over near my uncle, so I got permission to stay at my uncle's house. All these moving pieces that you had to manage, which we have to manage in life to be independent.
Right. So how does it feel to hear that you did a winter internship in 1978 at the field school, and that it's still an existing program today?
It's wonderful. It's exciting. And one of the other pieces that's exciting is the yearbook, as well. And that's because I went back to visit the field school, and I was walking up the steps, and I said to a young person years ago, what's going on with the field school? And she said, the yearbook just won a bunch of awards. And she said, one of the students years ago had talked to Elizabeth and said, we need a yearbook, and made it happen. And I got to tell her I was that person. So because we got together, I keep it in the safe. I got out here, I'll demonstrate it. I got out here, this, which I'll zoom in on, is a draft of the original copy of the first yearbook.
Wow, this looks amazing.
Okay, and what I did is I said to Elizabeth, why don't we have a yearbook? We need to have a yearbook.
So were you on the yearbook committee?
Yes, I was on the yearbook committee, and I started it was my idea to do it. And what Elizabeth would say is, okay, work out a plan and prove that she'd make requests of you. You need to get a plan, you need to find out you'll need this, and you have to do this. She always would give you hoops to jump through to make sure that you actually were going to execute.
Right.
And then she'd give you a little more. So that's me. And then wonderful Gabi and the other Patty. Gabi was the photographer, Patty was copy editor, just brilliant young woman, and we all worked together with a...
Oh, I see your name right here,
yeah,
editor.
That's it, yeah, editor.
Yeah.
So it was again, this was the field school. We don't have it, I want to do it. Okay, prove you've got the stuff to make it happen, start executing. So she'd create these little things you had to jump through to earn your way to it. And then this is it, and then of course I'll just share, this is the final. That's what it came out with. So you see, that's one of the proof copies. I don't have all of them, but you get the idea. This is the original. And so I got to create the yearbook that later won awards. And that's pretty exciting because I've now published several books. And the thing is I don't read fast enough to read my own books. I produce 4 books, but unless I listen to them, my reading speed's still not fast enough.
Right.
So I use text-to-speech and other tools. So when people go, well, I wish I were a writer like you, I go, well, let me tell you what it's like, And then the other thing that I was so excited about that Elizabeth did is the National Science Foundation Scholarship was set up, and we got to earn the right to go to it, and I got to study electronics, holography, and acoustics. It was very exciting at Ball State University, and when I came home I was so motivated I wanted to write up all my notes, and my mother said, if you write it up, I'll type it up.
Okay.
Well, a group of students before had created what was called a holography lab that had gone the year before, but there was no class on it. They had just made it there, and Elizabeth let them set it up and so forth to make holograms. Well, I wrote this book, and here's the book here. We'll just show some pictures of it. And it's 110 pages, and it was designed to be a book on holography. And afterwards, I went to Elizabeth and sat down and I said, I wrote this book, and I want to teach my peers holography and have a class in holography.
Right.
So she said, well, you need to get the person to supervise and blah, blah, and these are the drawings I did, and if you do this, this, and this, and we have a supervisor involved, academic, to make it work, then I'm open to do it. And
Who was your supervisor?
I think it was the science instructor, and I have to look up who it was. I don't remember the supervisor for it, but I got to teach my peers, and there's a picture of it on my LinkedIn of the holography class.
That's amazing. One of the things that worries me about our current school system is that we don't give students enough opportunities to be creative, to act on their ideas. So how do you feel like the field school was a place where you could really explore your imagination and bring things that you desire to see into creation?
Yes, and here's the balance of it. It's not just having a place to succeed. If we don't have a place where students learn how to both succeed and fail, they'll never build core confidence.
Yeah.
And that's what the field school did. If we make it so everyone wins all the time, then they'll never develop core confidence. And so Elizabeth really understood we have to have calculated risk. We have to have chance. She just didn't want us to fall off the second story.
Right.
She'd want us to fall on the ground and not be hurt.
Right.
So to me, one of the pieces is the room to create, the room to explore, the room to make mistakes, the room to experience failure, the ability to build real core confidence. And I think that's a huge gap. I've spoken to young people today many times, and I look at them and I go, you've never had the opportunity to fail, so you have no confidence,
Yeah.
And so that balance of creativity, of science, which was big for Elizabeth, she believed mathematics, Pythagoras theorem, all of them in her work, along with the opportunity to be able to have the experience of failure and calculated risk, and then consequences. If you did something wrong, she always had her version of timeout. All of those, to me, were the gold that I still believe exists from my outside experience of the field school. So that they have it. The other thing is the ability, both art and activity. Some people need outdoor activity. Some people, their expression is involvement. So having that field for people to play in is very metaphoric to me at the field school. I mean, it was designed so it was a place to get outdoors.
Right.
And I think we've killed off that ability to just run and be involved and engage. And that was primary when I walked through the new building of the field school with Elizabeth when she was first considering it. She goes, I want fields out here. You know, I want the ability for both art, science, involvement, and the ability to learn from mistakes and consequences.
I think that's amazing because, like, all of the things that you're saying that Elizabeth envisioned are all the things that we are continuing to build on to this day. We just did Diversity Day, where we had literally 300 students go out in the field and work on different things, issues that were important to them. And one of the things that I supervised was called the police division, where I took about 15 students to meet this public defender who had been formerly incarcerated, well, wrongfully incarcerated.
Right. And
he told his story about, like, you know, being signed to the NFL, having having the opportunity to really be something, and then getting caught up in the situation where he was looking at 10 to 15 years, you know, in prison. And although he did serve 6 months in jail, he came out and he had to figure out how he wanted to be an active participant in society, and he chose to become a public defender because he was in a situation where he had to pay a lot of money for a lawyer, and his family didn't necessarily have the resources to do so. And so he decided that he was going to do something that was good for society. And I think it was really great for our students not only to have that experience with him, but to have that experience with him in his world, right? To go to his office, to talk to him, and he even took us to court. So to hear you say that Elizabeth wanted her students to be outside, right? To be involved in the real world, to see what folks are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, really speaks to the field that we're creating today. So I want to ask you, we're about to enter into like our week of giving, and we 100% of alumni proceeds goes towards financial aid. Can you talk a little bit, because I know that you've given to the field school and you've supported the school since graduating and have been like very consistent. So why is it that you feel like giving back to students who can't afford to pay full tuition at the field school is so important?
I want to start with the name David Davenport, because David Davenport was one of those people in my class. Have you ever heard of him? Or
no, I've I have. Yes, I've met David Davenport multiple times, actually.
Well, David Davenport is one example of someone who could have never afforded to go to the field school, who turned out to be an outstanding person, citizen, everything else. And I really think he may not have made that path otherwise. And it's also connected into Elizabeth's connection to diversity. See, if all we have is people that can afford to come, and they don't get to meet people that aren't as fortunate, that have opportunities, it's not as rich an experience. So I got to know David and other people in that experience. My parents were, I would say, upper middle class, working class, you know, but I got to meet students that had lots more money than me and much less than money than me, you know. And that's part of the importance of this fund, because it makes available so that we have a mix of students. Because that's one of the richest things. I mean, that's one of the richest things of growing up in DC is diversity. You know, I believe diversity creates better of just about everything. And that was also core to Elizabeth. If you had an opinion, even though if she agreed with it, she would force you to look at the other perspective, the point you almost were ready to join the other side. And said, until you see through their other ideas, you don't see the perspective on it. And that was core. And that's something I have today. It's like, okay, I don't like this person, I don't like what they do, and I hate them and something else. I go, wait a second. If I'm not understanding their world, then I'm just as bad as them.
Right.
If I'm in the us or them game, I'm just as bad as them. And it's really given me a rich perspective. But that's one of the values of the Alumni Fund that you have going, and why I've had the opportunity to donate, and whatever you can. I've had, many times when things were thin, I could give a little bit, and other times more, because it allows a David Davenport to get there.
Yeah.
And many more that really, it's not the helping them, it's the gold they brought to my life, because I got to see different perspectives.
Right.
See, it's not I'm going to give you a hand down there. David brought something to it where I didn't know his background. He was just another student with different perspectives. So I think that's one of the real goals of this program.
Well, I've really enjoyed speaking with you.
Yeah.
And it's always good to hear from alumni who were there from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
I've only been at Field for 2 years, and it has had a tremendous impact on me because I see the level of intentionality that teachers have with students. And to hear someone like you talk about the same level of intentionality back in the 70s really makes me feel good and proud to work at Field. So I just want to thank you for sitting with me, talking, and giving us an in-depth view on the impact Field has had on your life.
Yeah, and it's so exciting, like you said, to see, to me, the spirit of Elizabeth Ely living on, because that's my experience of it. She set a standard for education that, from all my experiences, is still living strong at Field School, and I want it to keep growing. So excellent. Well, great to spend some time with you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great.